Now entering the squared circle pit, we have a musician, a winemaker, and an auteur. I have Maynard James Keenan with me. Maynard, thank you so much for doing the squared circle pit.
No problem.
I want to quickly mention that Maynard's book, A Perfect Union of Contrary Things, is going to be out on November 8th. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interesting tidbits in there. Now, this podcast in specific is all about pro wrestling, and I was honestly a little surprised to learn that you were into pro wrestling until I saw that you did some amateur wrestling in high school. Is that accurate?
High school wrestling.
Yeah. And
yes.
So I was curious, like, when did you get it? When did you get into pro wrestling? What was your first exposure to that?
Just the Lucha Libre element, or that flavor of pro wrestling is very prominent here in the Southwest, so close to Mexico. So that's been my initial interest in it, is just a regional flavor.
Mm-hmm. So you first got into it when you moved to LA? Is that kind of the?
No, in Arizona.
Oh, in Arizona, I see.
Yeah.
So is that what you're into, like more the Lucha Libre stuff, like the triple?
That's the stuff that I've been most exposed to, and that's, of course, they all have their own flavor, but just the acrobatics attached to it are just very inspiring.
Yeah, it definitely. Do you watch like a specific promotion or?
No, just the local stuff here, which is always, there's always guys that are traveling, bringing their stories with them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's most of the local stuff.
I see. Yeah, and I noticed that on the last PUSCIFER tour, it was kind of like the vibe was like a Lucha Libre show.
Yeah, our stage has a big ring in it.
Yeah,
and the drums sitting in front.
And you're wearing I believe a Rey Mysterio mask,
mm-hmm.
and there was a lot of masks going on. Now, how did putting that show come together? How did you get, getting a ring? I'm sure traveling with a ring is no easy feat, and the wrestlers and all that.
We knew a few people that were involved. We had actually done a video, so on kind of separate events in a way that kind of collided, a little coincidence, where once, my manager side of things knew some guys who did the Lucha Libre school. They have a wrestling school down in Southern California, and it just coincidentally happened to be the school that we actually filmed some of the video at from a whole another set of people. So they kind of all collided at once, and then we were looking to film some bits for the tour, and the guys who run the school said, well, let's just come out on the road. Like, okay. That works.
Yeah, and it was cool seeing a few, there was like some exhibition Lucha Libre before PUSCIFER came on, and it's a cool way to get the crowd going. What was the response from your audience to that stuff? Were they popping for it?
Mixed reaction. Of course, you have people with their mouths hanging open going, what the hell's going on right now?
Mm-hmm.
And the other people that are, excited because they've never actually seen something like that at a supposed rock show.
Yeah, and the video you were talking about is the money shot video, in case anybody wants to go back and take a look at it. And I think Lucha Libre is one of the most exciting forms of pro wrestling, just because it's so, like you said, it's so acrobatic, and even if you don't know anything, you don't need any storylines, because it's really just about the athleticism.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Jumping backflips from the top rope. It's just great.
Yeah. I'm all for it. And so have you watched, like the more mainstream stuff like WWE? Have you ever tried to get into
on
that?
Occasion? I had a couple friends that are avid fans, and so of course that always seeps over. So of course I always immediately I can see how the show is as important as the actual acrobatics in the WWE. So it's very it's very important for them to have the high drama.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it in a way it's a much more when you were kids and you had your mom or your aunt all caught up in soap operas on TV. This is a much better. You wish your mom was watching this instead, because it's still the high drama, but there's actually some blood.
Well, WWE they're trying to not have blood, even though I don't know if you saw SummerSlam. It ended with Brock Lesnar just giving hard elbows to his opponent Randy Orton, and there was like a puddle of blood in the ring, which was kind of weird for them because they're all serious about concussions now and avoiding concussions.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember back when I was living in Ohio years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This would have been. I'm trying to think of when this would have been. I'm guessing early '70s, when mid '70s, when Igor was one of the big names on the pro wrestling tour, and it was right around the same time as the original Globetrotters were doing their circuits as well. So in the same gymnasium back in Ohio, I saw some of the earliest incarnations of the wrestling tour.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I would have to Google a bunch of those names to see who they all were. But I mean, I would imagine that would be pretty much one of the beginnings of all that, right? 1975.
That is kind of when WWF at the time started trying to be a little more, as they say, getting out of the smoky halls and into the arenas.
Mm-hmm.
But wrestling,
the big gymnasium is pretty awesome.
Yeah, wrestling has existed though for, they'll say since Greek times, but the modern version of it since even the early 1900s, I should say.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's crazy is everyone always knew that it was staged. I was recently reading a book about where they pull quotes from the New Yorker about a wrestling event in the early 1900s. I keep saying early 90s, but and everyone always knew that it was just a show.
Right.
And when I'm assuming at one point you realized it was just a show as well. Did that kind of deter you from interest?
No, not at all. I mean, even as a kid, I recognized that this was a show.
Yeah.
But when you sign on to, when you play Monopoly, these aren't actual properties. You're just signing on for the game.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You dig in and you try to get Park Place, right?
Yeah, it's
so that's what I recognized even as a kid watching this, because even back then I was actually in junior high or elementary school wrestling. So when you're going up against a kid who's got more experience than you, and you're getting tossed on your butt with the high school wrestling, even knowing what that was, it didn't ruin my love for the show.
Mm-hmm.
The show was really incredible. I recognized it as being a show.
Yeah.
It was great.
Did you watch when you were in high school? Did you fraternize with your teammates, and would you watch wrestling, or was it kind of?
No, at that point we were more. In my high school era, there was that separation of that's not real, this is real. Whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Take a chair on your back and see if that feels fake.
Exactly. Yeah. Even I feel like the term fake is so antiquated because it's more choreographed than it is fake. There's nothing fake about falling.
Yeah. Grandma wouldn't last a minute in the ring.
She might cut a mean interview though. I feel.
Yeah. Falling is falling.
Yeah. And I mean, you do training with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now, which I think is kind of cool, and I have a bunch of friends that do that as well. And I feel like there's a lot more martial arts coming into wrestling now, and I feel there's a lot of crossover.
Oh, absolutely! I see it. I absolutely see it.
What do you think?
You see it in films now, even all of a sudden, back in the Jean-Claude Van Damme era of martial art films, it was all kickboxing and those kind of things, and karate and kung fu, and now you see. In the last 10 years, there's arm bars and chokes and all those kind of things.
Yeah. And I was curious, one of the things I was wondering, have you ever considered, if you didn't go into music and you instead went to wrestling, what your persona or your character would have been? Because I feel like you from what I get from your stage presence, you come off as more of a heel or a bad guy, and I feel you'd make a pretty good heel.
I would probably be the guy that you didn't see coming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's you always have in the lucha libre ring. You always have the two opponents and their team, whatever it's. But then you have that fifth person who's throwing a wrench in everything you didn't see coming. I would probably be the fifth guy.
I see. So you'd be the guy in the middle of the match who just runs in and ruins everything.
Yes.
You know, like going back to my thought that you would be a heel, I vividly remember seeing a concert. I believe it was a Tool show, but it was like it was at Madison Square Garden, and the whole time you were teasing the audience, just being like, "Oh, you guys are loud," but you know, Jersey was much louder, and the crowd control that you had was phenomenal because, like, while the crowd was like cheering, as soon as you mentioned Jersey, which to a New Yorker is like the ultimate enemy for some reason, like they were just going nuts, and it was just great mic work. And I feel like, you know, if this whole music thing doesn't work out for you, you could at least be a manager in pro wrestling.
Wind them up.
Yeah. I feel like that's I feel that's kind of something that music and wrestling shares, in that you always want to wind up the audience. Like, the audience is a part of the show. Would you agree with that?
Well, at the end of the day, you're an entertainer, and if you can't entertain, you might as well get another job.
That's very true. And so with the Lucha Libre, do you see integrating it more into the show, like with future shows? Are you going to keep doing that sort of thing, or?
It all depends on where the storyline goes. I think at some point we'd like to do a longer, not a long film, but maybe like a short film, 30-minute film that integrates some of that material along with any kind of future material we have coming.
I see. So it's kind of now in the lore of PUSCIFER, and like you're going to expand more on it as it goes.
Because PUSCIFER is kind of rooted in the Southwest, so all the lore that comes around, comes along with the Southwest is part of our story.
I see. And then living in Arizona, you can't escape the lucha culture because it's just all over there, right?
Correct.
And have you watched actually Lucha Underground? Have you seen any of that stuff?
I just downloaded on iTunes. There's that new series, and I have not watched it yet, but I have it on my computer. I was still working my way to Mr. Robot.
That I just finished watching the season finale of that. That was. But how far are you? I'm just curious. How far are you along with Mr. Robot?
I just finished it last night.
Oh, it's the whole series.
Yep.
What do you think? What do you think of the twist at the end? What's
quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that show is kind of like, I'm always like, do they know where they're going? Like, is this really happening? Like, are they on top of it, or are they losing control? And then they do something like, oh, they know exactly what they're doing.
Right. Well, and I think that's kind of the case just with wrestling too. If you know where you're going, it's easier to throw up red herrings and distract people from where you're going, and then surprise them, knowing full well where you're going.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel I think you will really enjoy Lucha Underground because it's unlike any other wrestling show that I've ever seen, because it really is kind of a soap opera. Like, they fully embrace the cinematics of a soap opera. All of the stuff that isn't the wrestling is shot like a movie. There's a score, and there's really intricate, supernatural plot lines with all of these cool characters, and they have great luchadors, and it's really the most fun wrestling show and the most unique wrestling show out there, I feel.
I agree.
Do you now with WWE and stuff? I always feel like the thing that they're projecting is a very mainstream kind of thing. It's like, it's for everybody. It's very inclusive, and with the Lucha Underground, it's a little more well, obviously the name Underground is in it. It's for perhaps a more in-tuned wrestling fan. Is that what kind of draws you into that, or like do you kind of shy away from more mainstream stuff?
Well, I just don't, I'm not very much of a mainstream guy to begin with. So yeah, that's probably why I kind of respond more to the Lucha stuff.
Hmm. And I've been watching in LA. There's a company called PWG, and I've been seeing one of your bandmates in your other band, Tool, Adam Jones, just sitting front and center at the last 3 or 4 shows. Have you ever heard of that company or checked out any of that stuff?
I haven't checked it out at all. No, I probably should.
Yeah, it's a PWG. It's an indie, but they're kind of like a all-star fed because it's a very punk rock situation. They basically they do a show every 2 months out of this tiny like lodge in Reseda, California. There's about 300 people in. They don't, the shows sell out in a minute, and they could basically play a venue 5 times bigger, but they just don't want to because of whatever they figured out. It works, and they have wrestlers coming in from all different promotions from all over the world.
Oh yeah, that's always the danger of any project. As soon as you think you're going to get bigger, you get greedier. It just adds much more chaos to it, and it's no fun. You take the fun out. Finding there's a guy that's doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a very aggressive version of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments called Fight to Win Pro, and he's found that their sweet spot is between 1,500 and 2,000 people. That's it. It's perfect. Everybody makes money. Well, the guys who win make money, and it's a sustainable, intense, wonderful presentation. If it got any bigger, it would, it just ends up, I think, kind of killing the vibe.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's something to keeping things kind of intimate. And it's interesting you say that. Is that sort of what inspired PUSCIFER? Was you trying to scale down, so to speak, and try to?
Yeah, because there's something about theater settings, those large theater, medium-sized theater settings that just end up being a very unique way to present music when you can actually add theatrics to it in a way that it's already, the word theater.
Yeah,
it is.
Of course.
It's theater. When you start to get into arenas, now you're kind of jamming a show into a kind of a boring space. And you're having to build the whole thing, and which is fine if you're at that level. But I feel like something like PUSCIFER would lose something in an arena.
Mm-hmm. And for you, the sweet spot, it sounds like, is a theater. Like you would prefer the more intimate thing.
2,500 seats, perfect.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were touring with these luchadors, during soundcheck or whatever, when they had the ring up, did you ever try to go in there and try to do some flips?
No, but I do. That was my perfect opportunity to train jiu-jitsu because we have the ring out. There's a dedicated space. I just throw mats down in the actual ring and train there.
I see, but no tope suicidas for Maynard.
I'm 52, so no.
Yeah, completely understood. That's why I think you have a career as a manager. And so let's talk a little bit about the autobiography. What inspired you to write a book about yourself?
Well, I co-wrote it with my friend Sarah, who was the older sister of my friend from high school. And, turning 50, you tend to want to set up some kind of a milestone. So I feel like that's where'd you come from and where are you going? So you have to kind of know those. To know where you're going, you have to kind of know where you came from. So it's a 50-year chronicle.
I'm sure it was quite a trip going back 30 or 40 years to your childhood or whatever. Did you find yourself getting new perspective on events that happened in your life when writing about it?
Yeah. Perspectives, confirmations, all those things.
How long did it take you to finish the whole thing?
About 1.5 years, 2 years.
And I have to say, like your personal output in the last few years, you've been keeping very busy, and you're always trying new things, which I find very inspiring. In that you started the winery, and now you're doing the book and all the different stuff you're doing with PUSCIFER. Is kind of the idea like, oh, I want to try this, and then you just go do it. Like, how do you set goals for yourself?
Well, PUSCIFER was around in the mid '90s, around kind of the comedy clubs. So the only thing that was holding PUSCIFER back was just technology, because all the animation we wanted to do, the short film bits, artwork. Back in the mid '90s, people weren't necessarily independent record deals. So we just I couldn't really get PUSCIFER going at that point. It took technology kind of catching up with it to really launch it. So that's why around 2005 is when I started really turning the heat up on it.
I see. So you always had this vision for it, but you just felt like you weren't able to pull it off until...
Yeah, I mean, back in the mid '90s, if you wanted to do a video, it was like $1 million budget.
Right.
Now you could do it on your phone.
It is pretty trippy that a phone has put so many other technologies into this one thing with the camera.
So all it takes is ideas now. It's just putting them together. If you have clever ideas and a clever approach, then you've got yourself a project.
And going back to the what I was saying earlier, I wanted to mention this too, about how I feel like you would be a natural heel. I feel like, I mean, this might not be 100% accurate, but I feel like there's always a little tension between you and fans of your work, in that you say certain things to, I'm trying to be nice, like not say something in a step, but like you'll kind of mock them the way a bad guy in wrestling mocks wrestling fans, and you call people dumb or sheep or whatever. Is that kind of your way of engaging with the audience, or just you having fun?
I think we're all, there's part of us all that's kind of lazy, and just to be able to call yourself out and say, you can do better. We can all do better. Whatever it is you're doing, take another look at it. You can do better. Be conscious of where you are. Be conscious of what you're doing. Be conscious of the things around you. Situational awareness. And just be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. I think a lot of people end up being just kind of settling into part of the problem. So by just calling it out, we're all better for it. If people get mad at you for calling out, saying that we can all do better, then they're probably part of the problem.
I can't disagree. And I kind of feel like this election cycle that we're currently in a way, is like a wrestling match. And Donald Trump is the ultimate heel in, like, even going back to the Republican debates last year, when he was at, like, Megyn Kelly was saying, you said this about women, you said this about women. He goes, only Rosie O'Donnell, which I thought was just the ultimate heel comedic line. Do you think Donald Trump, he's already been in the wrestling ring. Do you think Donald Trump is like a political wrestling heel?
Could be, yeah. Yeah, hard to say. I think sociopath is a hard one to map out.
I see. All right. Well, Maynard, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about wrestling and your new book, Perfect Union of Contrary Things. It's out November 8th, and I look forward to seeing some more PUSCIFER, and hopefully one of those other bands that you have. I hear there's a lot of hype around some sort of album, but I don't know anything about it.
Always.